I'm Corinne Stucker, and this is my therapy project for SLP 240 at the Estrella Mountain Community College, and this is regarding learning disabilities. Now, the lesson plan that I prepared for this therapy project is appropriate for children who have difficulty processing, and it could be beneficial for those who have learning disabilities, developmental delays, autism, attention deficit disorder, language disorders, and hearing loss, just to name a few. Now, this could be geared for a variety of ages, but for today's purposes, for my therapy project, I have geared it for the appropriate 9 to 11-year-olds that I'm planning to work with. Now, I've set up the workspace so that it's been prepared so that I'm in close proximity to working with one student at a time. And we're using a table and chair that's conducive to that student's ability and comfort for the activities that we're doing for this project. Now, in this lesson, the basic concepts of colors, shapes, and spatial concepts are already known by the student, and so they're familiar with the adjectives that describe the objects accordingly. Now, I will provide direction for the student, and then they will respond accordingly. Some of the goals for this lesson and therapy project are to help facilitate processing of linguistic concepts in an increasingly longer and more complex sentences. Also to help a student achieve success in following directions, and also to improve the processing speed and efficiency. With that being said, we're going to start off the lesson that I've planned. You could start off with reading a short story, and in this one I'm going to do Uncle Louie's Farm, and it goes along with the first activity that I have planned, and this provides just some initial auditory bombardment. And so it may start out something like this. That Brennan was visiting Uncle Louie's farm. "I love going to the farm," said Brennan. "There's always so much to see, and each time I come I see something different in the fields and around the farm. I wonder what I'll see today." Now, I'd continue and finish reading the story, and then I may follow it up with just some initial questions. Where was Brennan visiting? And my student may respond with Uncle Louie's farm. And why did Brennan like to visit the uncle's farm? Perhaps what type of animals did Brennan see at the farm? And just some other ones, tell how many birds were in the nest, if we talked about that, and name some animals that you probably wouldn't find on a farm. Could be another area that we could just add in for some additional thinking outside the box. So then I would want to move on, and at this point I would use a visual tool, and we'll follow this up after the story. Of course, it would have no color markings on it for the student, but I have just provided a few items showing that a student can complete. Perhaps we've asked the question, color the frog green that is in the pond. And in this case, the student could color the frog green because there is one in the pond and one outside the pond. Another question or direction that we would give the student is to, color the duck yellow that's in the pond. Another direction could be to circle the dog that's in the doghouse, and in this case, the student did circle the dog that's in the doghouse. I gave the direction to a student to place a purple X on a cow outside of the barn. So again, this just shows a few examples of the student having completed by following the directions after listening carefully. Now, at times, I may need to remind them to listen for such clues or cues as in and out, because here I gave a direction of coloring the frog green that was in the pond. And I also gave the direction of putting a purple X on the cow that was out or outside of the barn. So at times, you may need to reread the direction, but also keep in mind that doing the direction or giving the direction at a slightly slower than normal speaking rate is also beneficial so that the student can better process what they hear. Now, if at first prompting is needed, it might be helpful to point and review a few things in the picture as to what I reviewed with where the frogs are, and perhaps just in relation to, the out and in, for example. Just a simple little cue to get them started. Now, repetition of this type of activity is very important for giving directions and also for the student being able to work with these types of activities to help reinforce their processing skills and following directions. Now I want to move on to another part of the lesson, which is moving into incremental steps for this type of activity, where we help to increase the length and the complexity of the directions. So here's another activity, and you can start out very simple. This one, if you wanted to even go with a theme, this one is centered around body parts. So starting out very simple, you could say, blink your eyes. And the student could then blink their eyes. You could say, touch your nose. Or clap your hands. Or stick out your tongue. Maybe even cross your feet. Make a fist. Or touch your elbow. Now those are some very simple directions. Now we could make this a little more challenging and difficult by increasing the length and complexity of the directions. We could go with, say, 2 directions, like touch your knee, then blink. Smile, then clap your hands. Close your eyes, then open your mouth. Put your hand up, then touch your nose. Those are just a few examples of increasing in length and complexity. And going to another step further, we could go for 3 directions. Nod your head, make a fist, then wink. Raise your arm, touch your knee, then clap your hands. You see how each time I'm adding, we started initially with 1 simple direction, the next time we added 2 directions, and this time there were 3. So there again, repetition, giving the opportunity to listen and to be able to, perhaps if you need to, speak a little slower so that they're able to process better. So the same goals can be completed with the same activity. Now, a third activity that I have is something, again, where you can start very simple, and this one is where you use colors and shapes. So, for example, the colors and shapes provided here, I might ask the student to touch the green triangle, and the student could respond with touching the green triangle. Here we could also say, on another level, to increase it in a little more difficulty, is to touch the green circle, or touch the circle above the red circle. I mean, you could make it however you wanted to as far as complexity for the student. Now you can also do it with objects. So you could ask them to touch the bear that has the 2 squares, 2 yellow squares. And then going a little bit further, here we have, for example, touch the jar with a small blue square and a large yellow triangle. So see, you can progress and go incrementally, making these more challenging, increasing the lengths and the complexity, depending on the student's progress. Now at the end of the lesson, I would go back and review a few of the easier directions, and of course throughout the session with my student, I would be providing positive feedback and encouragement like, great job, or great listening, you did it, and such. So this concludes my therapy project. Thanks for joining me, and I hope this has been helpful.